With over 60 characters in Eternal Return, it might be hard to pick a main. With different characters and different comps, I'm here to help you find a character you resonate with. What's poppin' everyone, it's your boy Levi, and this is who you should main based on your playstyle. This has been my most successful series on the channel, so I had to make one for Eternal Return 1.0. We're going to be splitting the characters up into frontliners and backliners, and then again into playstyle. The three playstyles we'll separate characters into are divers, peelers, and poke/pickers. First, let's get into the categories. Dive comps are comps that prioritize the backline of the opponents they are fighting. They want to bypass the front lines of the enemy, ignoring them to eliminate the biggest threat first. Characters that fall under this category typically have good mobility and damage spells that will kill quickly. If you're playing a dive comp, you'll want to coordinate which target to eliminate first with your team, then reset the fight to take a 3v2 or continue diving to the next target. Peel comps are the opposite to dive comps. If you're playing a peel comp, you're either a character that is very strong and immobile, or a character that has good disengage. If you're a carry in this comp, it's your job to stay alive and deal a majority of the damage. If you're a character with good sustain and disengage, you'll have to try and keep your carry alive as long as possible. You want to mix these two archetypes of characters, as you don't want a team with 3 carries or 3 disengagers. These comps want to fight front to back, hitting what's in front of them first. The last type of comp are pick and poke comps. These type of comps specialize in long-range attacks and isolating one target. Comps that have projectiles should lower the health of the opponents before engaging. Then when the target steps out of position, capitalize on them and quickly reset for the 3v2 numbers advantage. Quick disclaimer to explain the labels: a lot of these characters can fit into multiple types of comps. The label is just to represent one of the comps that they do fit into. Also, a note on difficulty. This isn't entirely a mechanical difficulty rating. Some characters may seem easier than they are rated mechanically because you don't have to play them to their full potential. Some characters may be more difficult than others. Difficulty is subjective to their category. A medium difficulty tank may be easier to play than a medium difficulty backline character. I'll try to explain the ones that seem odd, so with that being said, let's jump into the frontliners. Your frontline tanks are going to be mostly your melee picks. These characters will have ways of initiating the fight and will be built on the tankier side. Typically, you'll see one damage item being your weapon and the rest built tank. They need to be able to stand ahead of their team and not die instantly if engaged upon. These characters are Eleven, Hyunwoo, Isaac, Mai, Marcus, Fiora, Lennox, Nikki, Elena, and Ekion. Important characters to note in this field are Eleven, who lost their RW combo in Eternal Return 1.0. With not being able to instantly CC opponents, her taunt is much easier avoided when used as an engage. Use it defensively to peel opponents off your carry. Mai is also a great character that can not only tank the front lines, but also support your carries. You'll want to pick her in a comp with an AP threat, as Mai has access to 3 special chest pieces that drastically improve AP and tank characteristics. Kind of surprised Mai hasn't gotten her own exclusive amp chest piece yet. Mai also gained the ability to taunt without pins, making her combo even easier to pull off. And lastly, we'll talk about Lennox. Lennox gained one of the best reworks of all the characters, gaining not only exclusive access to whip skill in the form of her W, but also is now able to shield herself on ability use rather than basic attack. This character is very hard to kill. She can stand the front lines looking to pick off enemies with her whip, or she can stand in the back and peel people off her carries. Moving on to the bulky off tanks. There are only a few of these characters, but this is one of the strongest group of characters in Eternal Return currently. These characters aren't bulky enough to solo tank the front lines without transitions, but also won't go down easy without a fight. This is due to having some natural bulk in their kit, which allows them to build some damage. These characters are Leon, Chiara, Shukai, Debbie and Marlene, and Yon. Leon is one of my go-to picks for new players, as he's really good engage and obvious indication of when he's ready to fight. With shield, taunt for skill, and invulnerability dive, you have 3 ways of dodging damage, allowing for him to compensate tank with some damage in his build. Shukai has gained a heal in the form of his W, allowing him to assist teammates that get dove upon. Shukai also has different options for playstyles. When equipped with Amp Drone, Shukai makes for a very powerful character when spreading his ult across an enemy team. Alternatively, equip him with Heal Drone, and the character is tanky enough to solo the front lines. Shukai's kit is fairly easy to use, but you will have to play the minigame of stacking his passive up to 100 with food for additional health benefits. Debbie and Marlene are Eternal Return 1.0's first character release, and man are they great characters. Debbie is the tankier of the duo, and she's able to survive in the midst of the enemy team with her damage reduction passive and ability to dodge basic attacks and projectiles with W. While this duo is listed as a dive character, their ultimate is able to pull themselves out back towards their team if having gone too far. Next up, we're going to call this group the Flex group. These characters can be flexed into the damage role or into a tanky role, or even a bit of both. Starting off with the easy characters, we have Yuki, Luke, Magnus, Bernice, Bianca, Barbara, and Vanya. There's one character that stands out in this particular group. If you've played any game with the tank Magnus, you'll know that he's one of, if not the hardest character to kill in this game. This guy is dumb stupid tanky, and he can easily solo the front lines. So why is he here? I put him in the Flex group because his amp build is no joke either. While still considerably hard to kill, Aunt Magnus is still able to pump out AoE damage with his spin and bike ultimate. Barbara is a character that is deceptively tanky. While the Burst Mage is one of the highest damaging characters with her ultimate, her tankier build has been popular at the start of Eternal Return 1.0's release. Barbara's turret has been beefed up in 1.0, and building Barbara tankier allows her and her turret to stay alive for longer while she's outputting the damage. Moving on to the medium and hard picks, we have Li Dailin, Felix, Sua, Estelle, Leanne, Piolo, Camillo, Irem, and Aiden. Felix was a character that was previously a melee carry for a lot of players. In 1.0, Felix gained a shield on his passive, not only increasing his survivability, but allowing him access to healing factor. Because of this, Felix is a lot safer diving into enemy teams, which given his engage range on W3, he can now survive a bit longer waiting for his team to follow up. Estelle was a character that also had a slight role change. Previously, Estelle could man the front line, solo blocking a ton of damage with her shield, and I still think she can do this, but I personally believe that this isn't her strongest playstyle anymore. Estelle is an anti-diver that can provide a ton of disruption for enemy teams trying to coordinate a dive on one target. If all else fails, ulting on a teammate will buy you a little bit of time to reset the fight. As we get closer to the backline damage dealers, let's talk about the melee carries. These characters are Jackie, Kathy, Daniel, Alex, and Shoichi. You'll notice that these are the previous assassins of Eternal Return. These characters can do a large amount of damage to a single target, with the exception of Kathy, who has a bit more AoE than the rest. With Jackie's mini rework, she's been adopted into the role of an assassin, able to massive damage to a single target. If her team is able to follow her up and help get the kill, she gains her jump and chainsaw reset that allows her to continue on to the next target. Alex wasn't included with Kathy in the AoE department due to losing his amp scalings. He still has his big AoE ultimate, but being a basic attack character, it's used for more utility than to nuke a team's HP. Sit back and use it to help teammates engage or as a follow-up. Most of our backline carries are going to be ranged characters. They like to keep their distance behind their front lines and will die very quickly if engaged upon. The easy characters in this category are Rio, Isol, Aya, Razi, Ava, Cicella, and Jenny. With traps getting nerfed, Isol is an interesting spot in Eternal Return 1.0. His identity has shifted more into escaping, being able to get out of engages through his stealth role. Isol also excels at picking off targets, being one of the few marksmen with offensive CC in their kit. Comps with him in it should look to pick off targets with his Q stun and bait teams back into his trap and ultimate combo in the late game. Razi also has a unique role in Eternal Return, being very slippery in fights. While she's best in a comp where she can use her mobility tools to create space for herself, she's also one of the few marksmen that can dive into enemy backline with her frontline. With a high attack power build, she can play more like an AP burst character than a marksman, helping her team delete a primary target. For the medium difficulty characters, we have Nadine, Hart, Nathapon, Tia, Celine, Chloe, Emma, Theodore, Carla, Hayes, Adriana, and Zahir. Alright, we'll get to the elephant in the room first. Yes, Celine is in the medium difficulty. With the recent rework of Celine, she's gone from being widely regarded as one of the hardest characters to play in the entire game to at most a medium difficulty character. Not having to manage bomb position on E is one thing, but the bomb stock reset being moved to detonation rather than E-connect has made her much simpler to combo with. If this character was intimidating you, I encourage you to try her in 1.0. She's incredibly easy in comparison. Similarly, Carla has also been moved to medium. Carla has regained the ability to basic attack, albeit it's a much weaker basic attack than normal while her passive charges up. You'll still have to be accurate with her Qs and stay safe with positioning, but she's lost the gimmick that's once made her very unique. And moving on to the hard characters, we have Martina, Hedgen, William, Laura, Adela, Sylvia, Adina, and Tazia. Martina makes the hard category due to her playing a different game than everyone else on the island. Martina is a very specific character in Eternal Return where she spends the early game taking photos of the action, stacking her passive. Once fully stacked, she emerged as this high damage late game carry. Until then, you're a liability to your team, and you should only be picked in a coordinated group of 3. Martinas will typically spend the early game going for objectives with heavy traffic to make the most of their passive. Unless you're in a tournament where dying would give points over, dying to get your stacks is usually worth it. However, your team will have to play 2v3 for most of the early game. Sylvia might also be a controversial pick to put in hard as well. Mechanically, she has one of the highest skill ceilings in Eternal Return. She plays much simpler in team modes, being able to flex as a damage dealer or a bulky healing frontliner. You also don't need to prioritize her passive of visiting every zone on Lumia Island in team modes. While the improvements from it are good, it's not a necessary component. And the last category is supports. You can make the argument that Theodore should be here as well, because he can't operate as a single threat backline. But when accompanied with the right team, he's phenomenal. The 2 true supports that we have are Johan, who specializes in healing and buffing his team, and Priya, who specializes in shielding and buffing her team. Priya is a little bit more complicated than Johan for 2 reasons. Her E requires some precision to hit, especially when going for 3 hits of it. Also, shielding is generally more difficult than healing, as it requires you to shield before your target receives damage rather than after like a heal. I hope this has provided you some insight on what character you might want to play. I encourage you to try all different characters and all different comps and find a select few that you might like. Once you find your character pool, you'll want to click or tap the video on screen now to watch my How I Would Relearn Eternal Return video, where I talk about how you can accelerate your learning process of Eternal Return through having a small character pool.